Okay, so good afternoon. So before we start the second half of our program, please allow me to introduce first or to welcome our guests for today. So of course we have Mr. Mark Smulders from FAO, and we have Ms. Lina Rospita also from FAO. And she's actually an alumna of the CNLP, specifically during the 8th CNLP in 2011. And of course, some representatives from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade from Australian Embassy. Can you please stand to be recognized? Okay, let's give them a big hand. Okay, same with Mr. Mark and Ms. Medina. And also some representatives or members of the media. So welcome to the 12th CNLP. Okay, so to formally start, I would like to call on Ms. Laras to introduce our guest speaker. Ms. Laras.
Thank you, Mafil. So before we ask Mr. Mark to start his presentation, let me read his curriculum vitae or resume. So Mr. Marcus Mulder gained his Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Economics in McGill University, Montreal, Canada. And then he followed his Master of Science in Agricultural Economy of University of Saskatchewan. Is it correct? Saskatchewan, Canada. And from his CV, we can see his professional experience. He is known as a senior economist as well as the food security expert. So from 2015 until now, he is a FAO representative both in Indonesia and Timor Leste. So without any further, I welcome Mr. Mark Smulders to give his speech.
Good afternoon, everyone. Do I need this one? Yes, for the streaming, right? Hello. Good to see you all again. Much more on a working atmosphere now. Last time I saw you all brand new. So I'm not Ibu Nina, according to your program. It's Ibu Nina right now from the SDG Secretariat. But I was asked to step in for Ibu Nina, and unfortunately she couldn't be here today. So before giving you my presentation on nutrition sensitive agriculture, I'll give you an oversight of the SDGs from an FAO perspective. How many of you know about the Sustainable Development Goals? I mean, how many of you do not know about the Sustainable Development Goals? Nobody has to put up their hands. How much do you know about Sustainable Development Goals? I mean, what's your responsibility for the SDGs? Yeah, I can ask you what. Do you know which SDG is relevant to your work?
Zero.
Which one?
Nutrition. Number one.
One, two.
All of them. That's too easy to say. That's too easy. Which one is a priority for Cambodia? Number two.
Number three.
Number three. What's number three?
Is
We're all going to learn SDG3.
How?
Speak all in sign
How they
language.
call it?
Health and well-being.
I see somebody already has an FAO. Do you have the FAO material there on SDGs?
Yes.
There's a blue folder there, on blue pamphlet. Let me see. I don't even know what the next slide is, but we'll see. One more slide. IT. There should be an SDG in IT as well, I'm sure. Okay, so there's 17 SDGs, which is crazy to have 17 objectives, 17 goals. There's a lot of goals to have. It's easy to deal with 2 or 3, but 17 is a lot. But basically the 17 goals are the result of more than probably all countries coming together, well over 150 countries talking to each other and deciding on what should be the next priority for the next 15 years, right, till 2030. And so when you put many countries together, you get many ideas, and everybody say, oh, you shouldn't forget this, you shouldn't forget that. And so we got 17 goals. I won't run through all of them, but indeed zero poverty, number one, and then zero hunger. Zero hunger, of course, for you nutritionists. How many of you are nutritionists, by the way? How many nutritionists? High up. How many of nutritionists are not from the Ministry of Health? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not from the Ministry of Health. Not from the Ministry of Health. Okay. How many non-nutritionists?
None.
Cesar, you too. Non-nutritionists, right?
No.
So, no, it's very important because for the SDGs, especially SDG 2, to be successful, we need to have nutritionists as well as non-nutritionists working together. Otherwise, we're not going to eliminate not just hunger, but also what we call all forms of malnutrition and also achieve sustainable agriculture. But as FAO, we're actually dealing with several SDGs, as you will see from the blue publication. Can you just hold it up? Here? Got it. This one, yeah? It just highlights 8 SDGs which are relevant to FAO, most relevant. But as FAO will say all SDGs are relevant. If you want to achieve the objectives of the organization of FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, you actually need to deal with all of them. But these are 6 that are clearly most relevant to FAO. Zero hunger, which is a short name for achieving zero hunger, all forms of achieving zero hunger, dealing with malnutrition, and ensuring sustainable agriculture. I'm not sure exactly the wording of it. But then, of course, gender equality is really important. Does any one of you know the importance of gender equality in food and agriculture, or in your own domain of work? Can you give me any kind of statistic that highlights the importance of gender equality in your work? Anything from your country?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the numbers, but there is a qualitative studies in Indonesia that actually female have, in terms of food distribution within the family, the mother is actually always get less nutritious food, because the best food is actually goes to the male members of the family. So that's the gender.
How many of you are from research institutions or universities? Quite a few from university, right? Right. There's another statistic that FAO produced in. We have every year we have a publication that's called the State of Food and Agriculture, and every year is a different theme. And we had one theme on gender, and we found that worldwide, if women were given the same access to productive resources as men do, then there would be 200 million less hungry people in this world. Because basically, as you also suggested, well, not quite, it's an example, but women do tend to be better in ensuring good distribution of food within the household. Also this year, every year we celebrate World Food Day on 16th of October. Every country will contribute to that. I'm not sure how many of you have participated in World Food Day in the past in your countries. Nobody. You're nutritionists, so you don't participate in World Food Day. Terrible. Seriously, it's an important event, and in fact it's true, most of it is managed by the Ministries of Agriculture, who of course themselves need to make sure Ministries of Health and other ministries are also engaged in World Food Day. Those of you at university, have you not celebrated World Food Day at universities? That's how I started first on World Food Days when I was actually going to university. It's a very important day because it not only highlights every year how many hungry people there are, it's also about taking a positive approach towards dealing with food insecurity, malnutrition issues. And every year there's a different theme. We've got water, investment, use many different themes. This year, the theme on World Food Day will be migration. Now, how many of you, why would migration be important to food security or nutrition issues? Any idea? What kind of migration are you thinking of when we talk about migration?
Refugees.
I was thinking from our context that so many countries people migrate to different countries for the, working. So most of them are farmers, so we may do some of the production that we are doing.
Yeah, no, very good example. Many people migrate to other countries for work, right? From all of your countries. Many of them are indeed farmers or people from rural areas. So migration is very important. Any other examples? Please.
Thank you. One of my migration, maybe urbanization, the movement of the people from the urban to the from the rural to the urban.
Yeah.
So like security and food supply to the urban needs to be.
I'm not sure where migration would fall under the SDGs. We could look at all of them. I'm sure migration is an important topic under one of the SDGs. But indeed, we have rural-urban migration and we have international migration for people looking for work. And of course, the more people move from the rural areas to the urban areas, the less people there will be to produce our food, which is a big issue. Of course, you can make many people migrate because there's too much labor in rural areas and maybe more labor needed in urban areas, but still we also need people in the rural areas to produce the food that we all want to eat now and in future generations. So migration is a big topic, and Evelina here, she showed me a study that she's been engaged in with I think some of the colleagues from Samuel on showing that when females migrate to work overseas, again, has a better impact on households than when male laborers go overseas. Because somehow females trying to make sure that whatever money comes back to the household is spent well on household welfare, when men spend on other things. That's a bit simplistic. But there's a caveat. It seems that when women migrate, when there's also young children in the household, it has a negative impact because, of course, childcare that needs to be taken care of by other members of the family or grandparents or whatever. But I see I keep on standing in front of, they're telling me to stay here, but then I'm standing also in front of the slide. Okay, so this slide actually is about the different indicators. Not only have we 17 goals, which is already in itself far too many. In addition to the 17 goals, I believe there are 160 some targets for, if you add up all the targets for each one of the goals, 169 targets. And then for each target, there's of course indicators. So the total is about 240 some indicators that all countries are expected to basically produce in all the different sectors to monitor progress towards the SDGs. So, and of all the indicators that have been agreed upon, actually it says 230 here, but it's now 242 or something. We have what we call tier 1, 2, and 3 indicators. Now for those of you involved in research, you should focus on tier 2 and 3 because those are indicators, the tier 3 indicators are in fact indicators that have not even been properly defined yet. There's no methodology. People have said it would be good to measure this or that, but we haven't got a measurement yet. So, for example, it would be good to measure gender issues in relation to land tenure. To what extent do we have women versus men holding the rights to producing the land? Now, some of these indicators don't exist yet, but the idea is there that if we want to look at the Sustainable Development Goals from a gender-sensitive point of view, we need to have more indicators on what it means to measure gender equality. So there's some indicators under, there's 86 agreed targets, but it have not yet been defined. So whoever's doing this needs to hurry up because we only have 15 years to go. So we need to come up with these indicators very quickly. Now, it's the responsibility of different countries every country to decide which indicators they want to measure and collect, and therefore measure progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. For each one of the indicators, the various UN agencies, FAO, WHO, UNICEF, ILO, various UN agencies, they have different roles as custodian agency. On the right hand side you see FAO custodian. So what it means that custodian agencies will help countries define the indicators and then also help them collect, do any capacity development that's necessary to help collect the data and information needed for the different indicators. So for those of you engaged in nutrition, nutrition indicators, we have zero stunting, but we have other malnutrition indicators that are being collected, that should be collected to measure progress towards the SDGs. If there's any indicators that in your countries are not yet collected or that need further capacity development, then either FAO or WHO or UNICEF might be there to assist the country to help develop those indicators. This week we actually have a training here in Indonesia between the Food Security Agency and the Central Statistics Office, as well as the Planning Ministry, to work on one of the SDG 2 indicators on the prevalence of undernourishment, which is about energy deficiency. Next one. So yeah, there's several materials that we've made. These are just shots of 3-4 different publications that you have that you can look at your own time and see how FAO looks further into the SDGs, okay? Now, just quickly then, whether it's FAO or WHO, depending if you work with, or UNICEF or other agencies, as I said, all UN agencies are there to work with you to make sure that you decide what should be the national priorities and what are the targets that you want to measure, therefore what should be the indicators. Make, of course, sure that there's a strong institutional and policy environment to help implement the SDGs. Support the different policy processes, and also very much work in partnerships, because one of the main things behind the SDGs, no single agency, no single ministry, no single institution can implement any one of the SDGs. You need to work in partnership with others. The SDGs are all very multidisciplinary. So every sustainable development goal is really something that you need to implement together with other partners to be successful. In the end, the sustainable development goals are about what? It's about human well-being, right? It's about achieving a better future for individuals, groups of individuals, meaning households, communities, but it's all about individuals. And if you want to do well, you need to see how you can bring together different efforts to impact on the individuals. So I already talked about the data that we need to collect, not only at national level but also subnational levels. Another big challenge for this SDGs is to make sure we can get enough data from subnational level. Now, when it comes to anthropometric indicators, non-nutrition indicators, health indicators, luckily they're available even at community level or decentralized levels. But for many other indicators, it's not that easy to find regional and community level indicators. So each country is also responsible to report, and FAO and other UN agencies are there to work with the countries to make sure you report on the indicators, on the progress towards the SDGs. We'll try and help you mobilize resources, but in the end it's all the country's own responsibility to see how each one of your countries is going to contribute to the SDGs and make progress. Any questions from your own experience on SDGs, and anything that really bothers you, that you wish you know more about? I could maybe give an answer, maybe not. Everybody's fully clear on SDGs? Don't tell me.
Just probably one simple question. Probably we can apply it to our level, national level. Now, how does, from your experience, how does FAO monitor the implementations of these policies or actions, and how do you generate greater actions in the member states to achieve the benchmark, for example, of the best practices? Is there a mechanism to disseminate the result from for the member states? How do you catalyze the greater actions towards that?
I think you just gave the answer, how do we catalyze? Because when we go to the previous development goals, the Millennium Development Goals, a lot of it was very much driven by the UN agencies. And of course, it was also the responsibility of member countries to deliver on the MDGs. With the Sustainable Development Goals, there's a very strong message by the member countries say, look, we want to be in the driver's seat. We formulated the SDGs, we want to implement that. So the job of the UN agencies, including FAO, is to work with the government. So here, for example, we have an SDG secretariat in the planning ministry in Bappenas, and the UN works with the secretariat in Bappenas to try and see what's needed to develop the indicators, priorities, but also now we have to develop a national action plan. The country needs to be in the driver's seat, and the UN agencies will see where we can maybe support, using our own knowledge, our own capacity to support the country. So FAO will be looking at the Ministry of Agriculture, but also Ministries of Fisheries and Forestry, and Ministry of Rural Development in Indonesia, to see how we can support those ministries achieve their own targets. But it's really, really important that there's national ownership of the SDGs. So it's really upon demand, really, upon request, that we will get engaged. Please.
My question is there any purpose about the order of these goals, about the SDG? Yeah, number one, number no, over D. Is there any purpose of it? Is it based on the rank of priority or something? No.
No. Simple answer is no. I think if you are engaged in fisheries, number 14 is the most important one. Or if you're engaged in land management and forestry, number 15 is the most important one. So it really depends on your discipline and what you feel is your main contribution. So it is important for any one of you to decide which ones is most relevant to your work. Obviously, all the SDGs, one way or another, hopefully will contribute to poverty reduction, which is the most, let's say, the most generic result. Maybe that's also why zero poverty is number one SDG, because everyone contributes to that one way or another. But then as you go along, I guess the SDGs get more specialized. Here in Indonesia, they made it very, they categorized the SDGs into three classes. What are the three pillars of sustainable development? Can anybody tell me? It's called the Sustainable Development Goals. So what are the three pillars of sustainable development?
Yeah, maybe in the short term is people, planet, and profit.
That's for, what are those three P's? People, planet, and?
People, planet, and profit.
Profit.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I'm not quite sure how they.
Or in other words,
They're not
it's
the
about
three main pillars of. I guess it's a different way of interpreting. But if you look at the literature, what are the three pillars of sustainable development? I can see it links to people's profit and, what do you say? Planet.
Or in other words, is economic, and then the environment, and then the social.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
I never heard that interpretation, the three P's. But yeah,
Yes,
so
three Ps.
sustainable development is defined as development is not sustainable or cannot be sustainable. That's the argument in let's say from an intellectual point of view. Development cannot be sustainable unless it addresses the three underlying areas of economic, social, and natural or environmental. So we cannot have economic development without people benefiting or without not destroying the environment. If you have economic development that destroys the environment, it's not sustainable. But similarly, we cannot all be hugging the trees and saying don't touch the oceans and the fish, because then you will not move forward economically. So sustainable development is clearly about social dimensions, which is people's well-being, healthcare, etc., environmental issues, and development issues. Now, in Indonesia, I think the first row, more or less 1 to 5, or maybe including 6, 1 to 5 was defined as social, right? And then 6 to 10.
1 to 11.
6, including as well, to 11 was considered more or less economic, and then the environmental ones is
6, 12, until 15.
to 15, and then the other ones 16 and 17, which are about peace, justice, and strong institutions, is 16, and 17 is partnerships for development. Those are both really completely cross-cutting, of course. By the way, the other single SDG, which is completely cross-cutting, can anyone tell me? See, there's 2 SDGs here: peace, justice, and strong institutions. Clearly, you must have peace, justice, and strong institutions if you want to have any kind of development happening. And you must work, because we said all SDGs are cross-cutting, as a special SDG on supporting partnerships and cooperation. Partnerships for the goals, it says. But there's another SDG here that everyone considers, everybody agrees, is completely cross-cutting. Which one would you say? Apart from poverty. Gender, exactly. SDG 5, everyone will say it's so important to ensure gender equality that everyone working on the other SDGs agrees that they must do it together with SDG 5. It gets a lot of positive emphasis. Any other question? Then we go to the next topic. Next topic, Igulina gave me about 60 slides, so I'll start with 58. So one more question.
Yeah. There is why life below water and life on land is the goals which not clear about the objectives. The others is decent work, good health is already clear, but yeah, it's.
What is your profession?
A medical doctor.
Medical doctor.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I'll excuse you then this time. Okay. As FAO, we're very happy that we have 14 and 15. So I'm glad you asked the question, so I can give you a good answer. Life below water is basically, I'm not sure how many of you realize, but if you look online a little bit about what's happening to our oceans and our waters, they're all getting so polluted. You know, the oceans are supposed to be our reserve for oxygen, for life, for food. But right now, I'm not sure whether you know, but there's more plastic in the oceans than there is fish. And a lot of the oceans, at least on the upper layers, and a lot of the oceans are at risk of dying with global warming. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about the barrier reef of Australia and completely dying. Most famous reef, that has so much life, that is dying because the temperatures are changing. So FAO, but together with other agencies, we made a strong case that if we're going to have sustainable development, if this world is going to continue to exist, we need to focus more on water and on life in the rivers. Our rivers are so polluted, there's no more fish. Oceans are basically warming, and a lot of life is dying in the oceans. And if we have no more oceans, we won't have a climate. We won't have an earth. So life below water is extremely important for our sustainable future. Similarly, the other one, life on land, is about all other natural resources, land, forests, and trees, to make sure that we manage our natural resources well. Because if we don't manage them well, again, we won't have a future for future generations, because there'll be no more natural resources left. So FAO made a strong case, but together with other agencies, such as UN Environment, IFA, and others, they made a strong case, and member countries themselves made a strong case that we need to put more emphasis. We can't just talk about poverty reduction. I mean, everything contributes to poverty reduction. So the idea about having so many goals was also to highlight why it is that so many issues are really important. There's even a separate one on climate action, number 13, which of course links to those other ones as well. So very important actually, because we are quite ignorant actually of how much we are destroying the environment. In destroying the environment, we're destroying life for future generations. That wasn't me, I think. All right. So I think we'll go to the next presentation, which is mine, really. Any more questions on this one? We can always come back to it again, because it's very much relevant to the next one anyway. So, one of the, oh, stay on the, don't go too fast now. I know you've given me so many slides, but one of the themes of this leadership program that you have now is, of course, on how to look at nutrition-sensitive food systems. So the reason I asked how many of you are nutritionists from a health background is that I'm going to try and talk a lot about nutrition from a food-based background, from an agricultural background. What are the three main determinants for good nutrition? Nutritionists. Do I need to say, as a non-nutritionist, I need to tell you what are the main determinants of good nutrition? Shall I give you a hint? The UNICEF model, 1, 2, 3. Huh? There need to be three things for malnutrition not to happen. You need to have access to food, or food security. No, that's access to food. That's the food security pillar. Nutrition. Oh, That's the pillars of food security. Access, availability, stability, utilization. That's the food security one. Thank you. Health, nutrition, the UNICEF model. What are the last three boxes? How many of you know the nutrition model from UNICEF? I'll show it to you in a moment. Now everybody take out your pen. Everybody take out your pen. You need to know this before you finish this course. So, the way health people and nutrition people look at the main outcomes that need to be positive for good nutrition or to prevent malnutrition is access to food, care and feeding practices, and health and sanitation. Those are the three main. You say, oh, of course, I knew that, but you didn't say it. It's part of known as a UNICEF model, but it's access to food, care and feeding, health and sanitation. Most of that is at a household level, individual level. What I'm going to say to you today is that the whole food system, from the farm to the table, to when people consume, needs to be nutrition sensitive. Because if we do not produce the right food in the first place, if we don't make sure that throughout the food chain, the food remains healthy, food safety issues are taken care of, etc., you will not have nutrition security. Because you won't have the right food on the table in the first place. Okay? Now you may go next. Anyway, this is just outline. Next one. Okay, one by one. Very quickly. True or false? I want to have your hands up. Individuals, households can be at the same time both undernourished and overnourished. True. All right, that's an easy one. Okay. Double burden of malnutrition, right? Okay, this one. Child malnutrition can reduce a country's GDP by 16%. Yes or no? Yes. Exaggerated or no?
I'm not sure
Huh?
what the percentage is.
Yeah, this looks like somebody made this up, right? Yeah. But I think it's true. And malnutrition can have a huge impact. Okay, nutrition is a health topic which should be addressed by WHO and ministries of health.
False.
Glad to hear that. Okay, next one. These are all too easy for you guys. I will go quite fast. Why not? Where?
Also true.
Why not?
Because you could be food secure,
So
but
what is the kind of nutrition that can happen in non-food insecure households? Malnutrition.
obesity.
Urbanized areas or highly, cities lack diversity. Most of the time they lack micronutrients.
Micronutrient deficiency, obesity, yeah, of course. Okay, next one. All children under 2 and pregnant women are vulnerable to malnutrition. That's too easy, actually. Yes, but I would say. Agricultural programs bring improvement to nutrition as a natural secondary effect. That was more difficult. I don't know. Nina, you need to give this answer because you put that on. Yes or no?
They will get the answer after your presentation.
It's a bit of a complex statement. Anyway, next slide then. Why does it matter? We just went through that a little bit. Next one. Okay, just a few more statistics, but I'm going to go fast because now we have an hour left, or less. I mean, if you want to have discussion. So just some statistics. I must say, when I looked at this graph, I thought, oh, the yellow ones are all bad, and the blue is all good. And it didn't look like there was that much bad, actually, but 2 billion people suffering from micronutrient malnutrition is the first one, which of course is a lot, and we know it's the biggest form of malnutrition if you look at this graph. Although, if you look at proportions, the next one is of course even worse. Out of 5 billion adults worldwide, nearly 2 billion now are overweight or obese. Major problem for sustainable development. Also in terms of costs, in terms of health costs, to deal with the impacts of non-communicable diseases into obesity and overweight. Diabetes, anyhow, let's go to the next one. These are just statistics. Okay, the title says it all. Malnutrition as measured through either stunting or underweight is reducing, but not fast enough, including in this region, by the way. Okay, again, this is again the state of food and agriculture. We did an annual publication on food systems, and this one comes from that publication on food systems. But again, to show you how indeed obesity and overweight is becoming a big problem. Less so in Asia at the moment, less obesity, but as you can see, rapidly increasing as well. Okay, next one. And this was Lena trying to show that she knows all the countries in the world. But as you can see, I think this slide mainly was trying to show that there's a lot of countries that are basically manifest different types of malnutrition. Child stunting and obesity, but there's a lot of overlap as well. Next one. So, I think I talked about it already, but many of you know this, but just to make sure that you're all up to date on malnutrition, of course, the negative impact can be on both morbidity and mortality, but also physical, cognitive, as well as intergenerational problems. Those of you who are nutritionists, health specialists, but I think just to understand for those who are not, how important nutrition is. Next one. This is an important one to understand. This was links to the 16% figure. If people are not well nourished, the negative impacts will also negatively impact on the economy. Higher expenditures on health, education, and lower productivity. It's a very important one. People who are not healthy, people who are not well nourished cannot be productive. Again, through the health specialists, it's not an issue, but it's something to keep in mind also for rural areas and when we talk about farming. Next one. Now here, what you can't see is actually also a color, but it shows you that this is actually productivity. This bar here is productivity, so it shows the biggest impact of malnutrition is not only on health and education, but mainly also on productivity. Of course, different impacts depending on what country you're looking at, but this is the relative importance of the different impacts. Okay. Now, SDG 1 is the first SDG, and of course there's a link between malnutrition and poverty, particularly as, again, if you don't have a balanced diet, it's going to be our main message. As everybody knows, a colorful plate is a healthy plate, but we need to keep this in mind. I've seen here, particularly in Indonesia, I don't see much color on the plate. I see too much nasi putih, nothing else. We need to have more color. With slow access to a balanced diet will result in insufficient energy, nutrients, reduced productivity, and therefore reduced purchasing power. It's all linked. I think it's the main message. It's all linked. Oh, by the way, I'm going to show you some graphs that you can't read. but it's all in these publications that we gave you. The publications with the colorful. So if you have them handy, please pull them out. There's one slide which I know talks about this leaflet, for example. So just have it handy because you won't be able to see it well on the screen. Next one. Okay, so the idea is to really emphasize that, yes, we know that health people think of nutrition in terms of micronutrient deficiencies, importance of breastfeeding, all these important things that need to happen for people to be healthy and therefore malnourished. I want you to think far, far back, all the way to the farm. And from the farm through the transportation, the processing, the supermarkets, everything that needs to happen for the healthy food to arrive at the table in the first place. Because if the healthy food does not start with growing the right food, many countries, including today Indonesia, they are pushing self-sufficiency with staples. Every country wants to be self-sufficient in rice or wheat or corn, whatever matters. It is not a policy that's going to help the country become well-nourished. If you neglect the other crops, then we're not going to have a healthy population. Okay, next one. So, this I found is a very negative slide. You see that this is just basically saying what can happen to a farming family if they are not well nourished. But the next 5 lines, I think, go ahead. So the mother is pregnant and underweight and anemic. The 8-month child is wasted. The 4-year-old daughter is stunted. Family members suffer from multiple micronutrient deficiencies. And during the lean season, family gets even worse. I'm not sure how it can get any worse than that. But this is obviously not a very good scenario for a farming family. I'm just saying before that we need to get the farmers to produce the right amount of food in the right balance of vegetables and meat and protein and others. If the farmers themselves are affected so badly, that's already a problem, of course. But it's true that most of the poverty in any country, the bulk of the poverty is in rural areas. So we need to start also in rural areas in terms of making sure there's good nutrition. Next one. And the idea also of this family was to show how different parts of the food system are also relevant. So you have the production itself, but you also have the storage, where you can have what is a typical thing that can happen in storage already, even at the farm level, that will even affect people in urban areas. Can you think of anything that might impact on health and nutrition? Anything?
The storage, right?
Yeah.
The nutrient loss.
Yeah. Not only nutrient loss is an important one. Yes, many nutrients are lost if there's poor storage, but it can be worse in that, particularly in cereals, you can get aflatoxin. You can get many other food safety issues addressed. Whether it's rice or corn or other wheat, there's many issues. If you don't store the food properly, it can go to waste. The trader, the kitchen. Actually, I'll take you through some examples. I think it's nutrition-sensitive agriculture and food systems in practice. I think that's the one that we're going through now, sector by sector, just very quickly. So yeah, now we're just looking again at the farmer. So his maize production has declined. So what's the next thing that's going to happen to him? The family will suffer different forms of malnutrition, but it has, the maize production. Can you go to the next? I'm not going to go through this in detail. I think we better run through it quickly. So if there's not enough maize, there won't be enough staple foods. Therefore, inadequate energy intake, and therefore the family will suffer from various forms of malnutrition. But also animals can die because of lack of water, or they can be unhealthy. So the dietary protein or macronutrients become scarce, low dietary diversity. So there's many challenges throughout the value chain. Storage and processing, we just talked about it. Of course, unhealthy food safety issues can lead to diarrhea. Diarrhea leads to less absorption of micronutrients. Children at risk of wasting or stunting, and nutritional status can simply get worse. So, marketing, poor road conditions or less insufficient refrigeration. So, in fact, you know, for fresh food, up to 40% of all food, or on average, I think 40% of all fresh food is lost just during transport. So, on the one hand, we're all concerned about how we're going to feed 9 billion or 9.5 billion people by 2050. But on the other hand, if we were to save all the food that's wasted or lost during marketing, transport, etc., we could feed everyone easily. So there's a lot of emphasis these days on reducing food losses and food waste, including through contamination or just deterioration of the food. Consumer demand. Obviously, if people don't have the capacity to purchase a healthy diet, I understand that in Indonesia, 40% of the entire population cannot afford to buy a healthy diet. And that's Indonesia as a middle-income country, G20. Still, a lot of people in Indonesia cannot afford to buy a healthy diet, cannot afford to buy sufficient protein. Usually it's what's most expensive, of course, but also other healthy foods that give you the right nutrition. All right. Food preparation. Again, now we're getting closer to typically what health people will look at, you know, once the food arrives at the home. But there's so much that happens before the food arrives at the home in the first place. But once it arrives at the home again, food preparation, very important, making sure that, of course, not just cleanliness, but also that you don't overcook the food so that everything is lost in the cooking process, or healthy nutrients are lost. Clean water, of course, everybody knows, you know, health people are very much well briefed on wash issues, right? But that's a very important aspect, of course, throughout the chain. Yeah. But again, if we don't think of the food system as something that needs attention for good nutrition, we're really missing a huge point. You know, for every kilogram of meat that goes to waste, I don't know how many hundreds of gallons of water are needed to produce 1 kilogram of meat. So all that good water has just gone to waste. Just one example. Okay, again, we're trying to just talk not about just the food system, but the entire, you know, what we call food environment. Again, you have these graphics in your, some very nice graphics in these booklets. Feel free to just go through the booklet. This one again looks at the food system as a very much a holistic, you know, holistic environment in which we all live and work. There has to be the right policy in the institutional context. Natural environment, of course, water, soil that's needed to produce the food, social, cultural context, economic context. So the whole idea here is just to talk about, you know, just to understand that the food system really needs to be understood well and needs a lot of support. There's one SDG, in fact, SDG what, 8? Which one is it, 12? Yeah, 12, SDG 12. Again, why is a separate SDG on what's called responsible consumption and production? It's basically about reducing food waste and losses. Because really, if we can just focus on reducing food waste and losses, then we wouldn't have to worry so much about the future. Could anybody tell me, guess what's the difference between food losses and food waste? Sounds the same in English. Any idea? Let me ask you, now the non-nutritionists, agriculture people. What's the difference between food losses and food waste?
maybe I will try to answer it. Maybe food loss is how much food loss during the food distribution from the field until in the plate, for example. And then food waste is how much food are waste during the uneaten, during the consumption. For example, uneaten food, for example, is basically we can eat this food, but we don't need to eat, so we waste this food. So that is food waste.
Yeah, no, that's more or less it. Indeed, a lot of food is lost anyway. You know, there's post-harvest losses if there's poor storage. Some of this wastage. Losses kind of happens during the process, as you say, during the food system. But wastage is more purposeful. It's because of negligence or because we're not thinking that this food could actually be used or be saved if we were to do more about having a healthy food system. There's a lot of food waste. Indeed, much of the food waste is more at the retail level, household level, individual level. Restaurants throw away so much food that doesn't get eaten, or retail shops, especially in the say modern supermarkets, even in our own countries here, but also in the Western world. A lot of food is just thrown out. If it doesn't look good, it could still be eaten, but because it doesn't look good, it doesn't sell, it's thrown out. So there's a big movement nowadays to prevent food waste from happening. And there's even people who purposely collect wasted food that's no longer wanted, and they demonstrate that it can still be used to feed people healthy without running any health risks, basically. Okay, next one. No, just stay there for a moment. You can, if you look through the next few pictures, I'm going to show you a typical weekly consumption of a household in different countries. And actually, I'm surprised this family doesn't look any more obese any heavier than they are, because this is the kind of consumption they would have in 1 week. It looks healthy, it's quite colorful, but you can see also a lot of sodas, beer, of course. Look at the Coca-Cola. There should be Coca-Cola somewhere. This is not a North American family. This must be some European, Swedish, because no Coca-Cola. And if there was a US family, there would be Coca-Cola there. But still, look, a lot of, I think it's Austria or Switzerland. Quite healthy. Over here you see, a lot of color, fresh fruits. I think it's probably Switzerland or Austria. I see some German writing here. Okay, next one. It says USA, but I don't believe it's USA. Here's Italy. They say the Italian diet, which is known as the Mediterranean diet, is one of the healthiest in the world. Mainly because Italians, they tend to prepare their food fresh, because Italy is a good climate, warm most of the year. So in Italy, people can afford to harvest their food and eat it within a short period of time. So Italians tend to have also much less processed food. It's much healthier to have, like here in Indonesia, a lot of food is prepared fresh. You don't buy that much processed food. I'm sure it's the same in other Southeast Asian countries. And you see a lot of fresh food, although a lot of bread as well. And some Coca-Cola and Fanta out there. But as well as some tin food. It's really important to avoid. I see one thing that disappointed me most coming to Indonesia, knowing Indonesia is a tropical country with fresh fruits and vegetables. I couldn't find any when I first came here. You go to the small supermarkets, oh, junk food, sugar, everywhere. Terrible. This is healthier. Next one. Mexico. Even more fruits, but also even more Coca-Cola. Yeah. It's all sugar, right? Most of Coca-Cola is just sugar plus a bit of water, a bit of flavoring. Not healthy. But yes, I don't see the hot peppers. But that's, similar to Indonesia. I think these are beans or chili peppers, jalapeno. I love spicy food like in Indonesia. Chad, no. There we go.
Become lesser and lesser the footprint.
Okay. That's all the water they get in a week's time. A lot of cereals, very few fruits. Although I hope those canisters of water are there as well. I see behind them. I hope that counts as well, because they do need a lot of water in the desert. But you can see with how little you can actually survive, but it's probably not very healthy in terms of nutrients sufficiency. Okay, next one. So, just to bring the linkage back to what we talked about earlier, I already talked about the importance of gender, meaning in this case equal access. By the way, gender is not just women in development, right? Gender means men and women. A lot of people interpret gender-sensitive work as, okay, yes, it means getting the balance right. So a lot of emphasis often on women, but it's, we talk about gender, we need to think about the relationship between men and women. Food safety, I already talked quite a bit about food safety and care and feeding. This is bringing us back, linking the food and agricultural agenda to the health and nutrition agenda. Okay. Next one. Now here's a different version of what I call the UNICEF model, where we look at basic causes of malnutrition, which is the whole food and agricultural side, if you want, the social, cultural, economic, financial, physical, or everything that goes into producing food, if you want, if you link it to food security and food systems. I always find it a bit of a funny graph to look at, because it all talks about causes, underlying causes, because the consequence, the outcome is malnutrition and death, which I find is a negative. Somebody needs to come up with the UNICEF model that's more positive, because the UNICEF model ends up in malnutrition and death as the final outcome. I prefer to see a more sustainable message. But that's why it talks about underlying causes, basic causes, underlying causes, immediate causes of undernutrition. Okay, so this is basically a model of undernutrition or malnutrition. Obesity, overweight on this side, you might be able to read it. But it's in your booklet if you want to read it more carefully. But here basically, these are the main determinants of good nutrition if you turn it around. Household food security, not food insecurity. Adequate care and feeding practices, adequate environment, health and sanitation. Because if this is green rather than orange, this wouldn't be red, this would be dark green. You wouldn't have diseases and you would have adequate dietary intake. So there's always, it is a negative model to present things, but it's important to understand, if you talk about malnutrition, what are the underlying causes. Okay? But in a sustainable development context, we'd like to see all of this turn positive. So if we do turn it positive, we look at how to produce and process and market nutritious food. Okay, so make sure this is where the food system comes in. So I think on top of this model, I will show you how the food system comes in a positive way. Next one. Make sure the natural resources and human resources, of course, are managed well. Next one. Income is used in a positive way for good health and care and feeding. Sorry, health and hygiene. Which then will result in a reduction of agriculture, at least for this food-related diseases, right? Next one. Nutrition education. There's so much to be said about nutrition education, of course, not just at the household, but also, again, when it comes to producing the right food in the first place. Labor-saving technology to help reduce the burden. I think that's it, right? One more? No, that's it. So I'll stop here just for a moment. Any questions on, see how many more slides do we have? Another 20. Okay, let's stop here. We'll carry on a bit, but this was all the theory, and then we're going to give you some practical examples. Any questions? Any discussion? I've talked enough. The DFAT ladies. Or not?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm an observer, but just wondering. So thank you for that.
Maybe if you take a mic because we're recording this.
you, but I'm just curious. It was interesting for me to hear about food waste, food loss. I'm just wondering about the processed food industry. I'm not sure, I'm not an expert in nutrition, but do you categorize that as food that would reduce malnutrition or something? Or is food that is processed further, like potato chips that has a lot of salt and everything, considered food loss, food waste, which potatoes maybe could be used more nutritiously, cooked somewhere, some way, another way? Or, and also the second question is there any movement or advocacy from the supply side instead of just the demand side, like don't eat food that contain too much sugar, too much salt, or too much MSG, something like that? Thank you. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know, anybody, any comments on that question? Anyone who's an expert, give this lady an answer. I'm not an expert. Well, I can just tell you what I think as an economist and pseudo-nutritionist. But I'd like to have an expert respond to this one. Who can give an expert response to that question? There was a few questions. One was, should we consider food that's not really good for you, maybe it has too much salt or too much sugar, as food waste? Wasted energy, yes or no?
The question is it still a food waste, even if it's not so good food?
Yes. What do you think? Good question for debate. For and against.
I have a microphone.
Oh, you have one?
Before I became a nutritionist, I worked for 3 years for a fast food. So to me, and then now I become a nutritionist, so to me I can consider that a food waste. Because during emergencies, our priority to areas is calories or the availability of food, not really the quality. So we still consider that as food, no matter it's high in calories. But in terms of the right now nutrition sensitive programming, the production that it took to produce that particular food has a lot of cost, maybe labor cost, transportation cost, and everything. And at the end of the day, you'll throw the food. So we still consider it as a waste for me. That's my opinion. It takes a lot to produce a particular item just to throw it away and not eating it, or a person or maybe a child getting that calorie. Or
But consumers like it, they pay for it, they love it.
yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Well, cash is cash. We cannot eat the money itself during different times. Like in the Philippines, they experienced Yolanda. So money doesn't really, well, it matters, but during the time of accessibility, reaching the people with the relief, or in that
Yolanda
area.
was a typhoon, right?
Yeah, after the typhoon, where it's very vulnerable time. So the cash itself, they cannot eat it because they don't have that source of food. They were not able to produce the food by themselves, or they don't have anything in the backyard that's full. So they may have money, but it's nothing to eat.
Can I have another opinion? Is junk food wasted food? It's called junk food, but you seem to like it very much. Yes or no? Poor quality food. People like it, willing to pay for it. What's wrong with that? Is it wasted or not wasted?
Can I just ask you what is junk food?
Well, so we're talking about potato chips with a lot of salt, something that is tasty, that people like to eat, but is not necessarily good for you from a health point of view. It's known as junk food. It's a food that you buy at, I won't mention names, but various fast food stores. It's basically not necessarily best for you, for your health. Gives you calories, gives you sugar, gives you salt, but maybe too much.
And precisely that is why we would have to be careful with the word junk food. I am afraid that if we use that as a definition, when we think of boiled cassava, we might think of boiled cassava as junk food, because boiled cassava will have starch in a similar manner as some of this processed food. I am not defending the processed food, but I think like the way we label foods should be in consideration. I don't think there is a good or a bad food. It is what you put together in your diet that makes it good or highly dense in micronutrients and so on, and not just a single entity. I am not defending the food industry, but I think we will have to consider that if it were not for the processed food, many of the calamities probably would have been difficult, particularly in times where you do not have water and electricity and fuel. But maybe because they sell, because the products sell, and maybe we, nutritionists, are also part to blame because our advocacy for highly nutritious, dense food are not as much as the advertisement. I think like we tend to preach in asking people to eat nutritious food, whereas for the food companies, probably they have a better way of presenting. It's not the nutrition, it's looking good or feeling good or something like that. So I think we will just have to review. But saying also in defense of the food industry, I think many big multinationals are beginning to look at their products now. And I know, well, I do not want to mention the companies, but I know of 2 companies that have lowered significantly the sugar and also the salt content, and now are working on the fatty acid content of their products. So I don't think we should look at the food companies or some food companies as our enemies. I think what we'll have to do is to have a dialogue with them and to partner with them so that we will have better nutrition products.
We have a leader in the room. No, very good, thank you. It was a very wise comment, and of course it all depends. But I think, as you said, advocacy and communication is very important for people to understand. So when you buy whatever food you buy, that you make it with a choice, that you know why you're buying it, and you know what is good or bad about your decision. I think, but that comes with education, that comes with advocacy, communication, etc. I'd like to have this kind of dialogue more. Any more questions on this whole thinking of nutritional issues throughout the food system? Cesar.
Yeah, Mark. Looking into the waste, what seems to me that the company, they are trying to get to reach all people with the taste, but there's no, well, let's say one regulation say that okay, the color should be like this, the salt should be like this, and the sugar should be like this. So now the taste to the community, to the consumers, if they want, okay, they produce. But now for the consumers, the population should know what kind of the type of the product that they have to consume. I think this is two things that for the waste and for the kilocalorie, let's say like that, as well as the salt or whatever. But now it depends to the consumer to choose what kind of product they have, what they need to consume. Yeah.
I hear 2 messages. On the one hand, you seem to suggest that there needs to be some kind of regulation. I mean, I think that's very much a responsibility of the government, is to make sure that there is regulation as to how much salt or sugar should be contained in different foods. And that is happening more and more. Some countries are asking some of the soft drink companies, for example, to reduce the sugar content of the soft drinks. But at the same time, you're also saying there needs to be good education, nutrition education, so people make choices based on well-informed decisions. Yeah, that's a good point. Any other comments on? I'm curious about nutritionists who work now mainly from a health perspective. Obviously, you understand also where we're coming from when we talk about what we call food-based nutrition. But to what extent is it something that you think is needed more in terms of understanding, basically from a preventative point of view? If you talk about prevention of diseases, we rather than having to cure them, it's another key aspect as to why we like you to think of the food system as a whole, even if your function is mainly to deal with the problem, so to say, once it occurs. So let's look a little bit at the practice. Again, I'll probably go through the slides quite quickly because they're a bit heavy, but it's drawing on this booklet here. There's different colors, and for each one of the colors, we're going through a different part of the food system. So you can quickly follow the PowerPoint presentation. I see this slide, a lot of recommendations, but if you look at this handout here, you can see there's 10 recommendations on how we can improve nutrition through agriculture and the food system. So number one, of course, which I do want to talk about a little bit, is I can say, having worked with agronomists and people in ministries of agriculture quite a bit, they don't think about nutrition when they plan their agriculture. They think about maybe targets, or they think about markets. They might think about what sells, what's good for the farmer. They don't necessarily think about nutrition either. So this is why it's important to have a dialogue between nutritionists and agronomists, for example. Agronomists often say, nutrition is not our concern, because it's a concern of the health people. And we say, no, everyone's concerned. You need to understand nutrition from the day you start producing, before you even make the choices as to what you want to produce. Obviously for a farmer it matters that he or she makes the profits. But unless you incorporate nutrition objectives clearly into the design of food and agricultural projects and programs, you won't address it properly. Then of course, look at the context. You cannot produce any food, you can't produce tropical foods in a non-tropical climate, etc. I mean, there's some obvious ones, but you do have to realize that not everything, not every condition, you can grow the right kinds of foods. But on the whole, we want to make sure that we look at the local conditions and try and see which crops we can produce, and also how far the farm is from the market. No sense producing perishable crops, far from the market. But it does happen. People do make investments, and development projects have made many mistakes in the past where they haven't thought enough about, okay, we're helping these farmers earn a better income, but then they forgot that the market is far away. So again, I won't run through all of them. Have a close look at this, because we don't have that much time. But if you have any questions on empowering women, is there again as number 6, facilitating production diversification. I would say a diversified food production system is a strong food production system. Many countries, as I said before, it's a very political thing to say we must be self-sufficient in our staples. Some of the politicians and voters seem to feel comfortable and say, as a country, Philippines also, a lot of emphasis on rice self-sufficiency, because rice self-sufficiency makes us strong. Singapore doesn't produce any rice. It's a strong economy, right? Brunei, where's Brunei? Here. You're not self-sufficient, I'm sure, of many things, but you're okay. It's a question of, to me, a diverse economy, including a diverse agricultural sector, is much stronger than if you put too much emphasis on one commodity or the other. You make yourself vulnerable. If there's a disease outbreak, you might lose everything because you only have 1 or 2 crops. So diversity, to me, you're much stronger in a diverse economy, in a diverse production system. Of course, number 8 is really important. It is really important, not just for health and nutrition issues, but we need to put much more emphasis on processing, storage, and preservation. We can save so much food, and we can ensure so much nutrition, better nutrition, in doing more about processing, storage, and preservation. And then, of course, the last but not least, nutrition education is really important. Many of you work on nutrition education of mothers, but everyone needs to be educated about nutrition, including diversity in food and so on. Okay, next slide. So, Is this the same? No, these are different ones, huh? These are different recommendations. These are the next slide are mainly policy recommendations, right? But I won't go through all the policy recommendations again. I think it's a very nice booklet put together quite easily to read. So in your own time, please go through it. Here again, we have the nutrition model. Sorry, what I call essentially the UNICEF model, but a little bit more. Again, the three main determinants of good. I like this one because it's positive, right? This one is also in the booklet. The outcome is not malnutrition, but nutritional status, good or bad. But the idea is, again, food access, care and feeding, health and sanitation, three main inputs into a healthy diet and good nutritional status. But the whole food system looks at all of these other intermediate outcomes. These things have to happen. You need to have women's empowerment, you need to have nutrition knowledge, you need to have good markets, on-farm availability and diversity and safety of food. Natural resources need to be managed. So this is where the food system comes in and the full food agricultural sector. This all needs to happen for those determinants to ensure that everybody has good access to good nutrition. And that's the main message today, in a different way. Far too much language here. So again, you can find a graph. Can you go back to the graph quickly? You can't read it, so it's a bad one. But what it talks about is basically, how, if you talk about investment, how can you invest in different parts of the food system to make sure you've got the right outcomes on the right-hand side. Okay? It's just the diagram we saw before, but with suggested investment projects and programs. Again, now there's another booklet that goes with the first one. The first one is the more colorful one, healthy diet. And then the second one that you have is, okay, if you're now going to, in your country, if you work for a planning ministry or Ministry of Agriculture, Cesar here, for example, and you want to invest in nutrition-sensitive agriculture, make sure that the agricultural projects in Timor Leste are nutrition-sensitive, here's your guide, quality guide. All the key messages are here. No, seriously, it's really, I think, particularly also in Timor Leste, but other countries in the region, there's still a lot of malnutrition. And I think if we make our investment in food agriculture more nutrition sensitive, then we will deal with malnutrition through the food system. So we don't just need to deal with it from a health perspective, but we can also make sure that there's good nutrition as a likely outcome, because we have a food system that's a healthy food system. All right, so again, just repeating a lot of what's in the documents. I just don't want to go through it all. But here we have some typical agricultural investment programs which may be useful. Okay, first of all, the first one is about have diversified farming system, as I said. Don't go for single crop. Okay, yes, some farmers can focus on rice production, but on the whole, it's much healthier, much better for the food system to have a mixed agricultural system. Rice fish farming. Rice fish farming has been really successful in Indonesia, where we're combining rice and aquaculture, but also bringing in other, combining poultry with other farming systems. Urban food systems, urban farming becoming really popular. How many of you you would say there's a lot of emphasis nowadays on urban farming? It used to be a normal thing. Everybody used to have their own backyard. When there was more space in urban areas, everybody would grow a little bit of food on their own. But then everything became more concrete and less green. But now there's more emphasis again. Farming on top of the roof of a tall building is possible. And it's very much, it can even help reduce the pollution or the temperatures in the city and have more green space. And it's not just something that's comfortable, that's nice to look at, but it gives you more direct access as urban dwellers, to healthy food. Although you can question the food is grown in a polluted environment, it's not necessarily very healthy, but it's definitely better than, not much worse than food grown with dirty water, where you also have health risks. But there's other, there's typical deficiencies, zinc or iron deficiencies, which can be dealt with on the one hand through fortification, but you can also look at your food system and see to what extent can we already ensure that some of the micronutrients are better addressed already during improved production. Okay, so now again going to the food system from production to marketing, processing, as to what are the different types of investment. This is a huge topic, I know, in Timor-Leste. I think what they say, something like 1/3 or more, 60% of all children have some form of aflatoxin in the system, in their blood, because of a lot of aflatoxin being in the environment and also being in storage. So we're working actually with the ministry on improved storage facilities. There's a lot of corn. Timor-Leste eats a lot of corn. It's quite susceptible to aflatoxin. So again, just to give you an idea as to how much we can do if we put our money where our mouth is, basically, in terms of sustainable development, how much we can invest in strengthening the food system. So in the end, we have better food, more healthy food, and hence better nutrition. In food, trade, and marketing, again, you could say, you can put a nutrition lens on all of these activities and see how can we make sure that whatever we do throughout the food system is more nutrition sensitive. And coming back to individuals now, consumer, okay, again, a number of typical actions. Basically, again, what we want people to understand is to be nutritionally to be well educated about the importance of a diverse diet, and that this is something that you can do like this at the individual and household level, but you can also take it all the way down the food chain and make sure that that this message comes across loud and clear throughout the food system. Now, do you want me to go through this case study or not? I'd rather see, we have a specific case study that on maize diversification, intensification. But if you like, I haven't looked at it. I'm too busy. Have you got your case study on maize intensification there?
Before that, can I ask a question?
Yeah, maybe we should just have a dialogue. I'd rather skip this one. We had a specific case study for you to discuss. But I'd like you to just talk about whatever's come to your mind during this presentation. Any questions you have, so please.
Yeah. So what is exactly the...
Do with the microphone.
So I'm wondering what is actually the FAO take on GMO, genetically modified food?
Why ask such a difficult question?
Because it's not in the presentation.
FAO doesn't have a specific take on GMOs. Actually, FAO and WHO have written a joint statement. We're not saying it's good or bad, because there's no evidence yet. We do say that we need to be cautious, like with any research. FAO sees GMO similar to any kind of bio research. I mean, GMOs is among the many different forms, not just GMO, there's other forms of biological research that have potential harmful effects. So as far as FAO is concerned, research must continue. But we do caution the research companies to make sure that, and others of course need to police the research companies to make sure that whatever research is done is not harmful to individuals, to humans. But at this point, FAO will not say whether it's, neither WHO will say whether GMOs are good or bad. But again, with any other kind of innovative research, we need to be careful. So FAO does say that when GMOs is promoted, that neither the environment nor individuals are harmed, but as a consequence. But often, I think in many cases, we don't know yet what the outcome is of the GMO research so far. I think my personal opinion is I would rather see GMOs used for producing, commodities that are used for industrial purposes rather than ending up in human stomachs. But that's my personal opinion.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kaur from Malaysia. I have a comment and then a question. The comment is going back to the term processed foods. Yeah, I think we must be mindful that historically our forefathers had processed foods, like salting fish when they catch excess fish, and then they salt it in order to have this fish when the time is, when they don't catch as much fish. People who grow fruits and vegetables, they would pickle them, maybe the seasons when they are short of these fruits and vegetables, they still have this pickle, fermented foods. And so processing foods is historically an important part of our food production and consumption. Yeah? So we need to be very sensitive to the word. If you mean those that are processed in the factories industrially, then that's another issue. What I wanted to ask yourself is, as a custodian, one of the custodians to this SDGs, and you are making your presence at the national level, but very often what we at the ground level encounter is, on the one hand, supposed to have multi-sectorial, multidisciplinary cooperation in going through this success of the SDGs. Yeah? And so I wonder, what role do you meaning the FAO in the country level or even regional level, could do more to ensure there's this collaboration across the different ministries, relevant agencies? Because we have seen the lack of success, shall I say, is constrained by this lack of inter-agency collaboration. Could you the international agency, as a custodian, because it is in your interest also to see the success. So could you be doing more?
Okay. Yes, let me give you a clear example there. First of all, I agree with you fully. Be very careful, and as your colleague also said, you're very careful the way we use language and terms. And I agree with you fully, processed food is essential to food security in many societies, as you suggested. We need to, many people, different environments need to process their food, to preserve it, and to be able to eat it at times of lean seasons or difficult times. That's of course different from other types of processed foods that we have in mind that are kind of over-processed, if you want, even reconstituted, where vitamins are taken out and then put back in, and so on. So it's definitely different aspects of processed food. On the examples, the typical example that we're working on right now in this region, for FAO, a big priority, not just FAO but also WHO and others, is the One Health agenda. We know what we refer to as the One Health agenda, which is about bringing together not just different agencies but also different ministries, agriculture, health, environment and forestry in Indonesia, fisheries, to work, for example, on antimicrobial resistance. Where there's a lot of use of antibiotics in the agricultural sector, because it's a growth hormone, it protects both livestock but also poultry, even fish are fed what do you call it? Antibiotics, basically, both as a prevention for disease but also as a growth hormone, and it's having a hugely negative impact because the antibiotics stay in the product, and we as humans that consume the meat with the antibiotics. And so there's a lot of antimicrobial resistance building up throughout the food system because of poor practices in agriculture. Of course, also because of poor practices in the health system, where maybe antibiotics is prescribed too easily, also directly to humans. But actually, FAO WHO predicts that by 2050, still a long time away, but not so far, maybe 2 generations from now, that the largest killer will be antimicrobial resistance for all humans. That 10 million people a year might die of AMR. So this is an example where we need to come together as agencies and as ministries to deal with an issue, and we're actually talking to each other and trying to make sure that there's less use of antibiotics, not just in agriculture, but also, of course, in health and education. And that education is very important in terms of understanding the dilemma. But there's many other examples where we need to come together, particularly as those of us working in food and agriculture and others in health and sanitation, for example. But I think so far, even during the MDG era, you know, there were different MDGs that the health people were focusing on this one, and agriculture people on zero hunger and so on, and there was not much reason to work together. But now with the SDGs, we're talking more to each other, saying, look, we're not going to achieve any one of these sustainable goals unless we talk to each other. So it's happening, more so than in the past. But there's much more that can be done, I agree.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting points that Professor Ko was raising with regard to processed food and also multi-sectoral collaboration and the challenges that we face at the ground level. With regard to the processed food, actually the WHO, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, we've developed, with the member state, they've developed what they call as the nutrient profile model to basically to classify food into what is considered to be healthy food and relatively unhealthy food. So, but the way we see it is more on a black and white sort of categories. But in real fact is that foods can range into one whole spectrum of healthy food index. But basically, it split foods and beverages into 2 big categories, and you can find it online. It's called nutrient profile model, and essentially we can use it as an advocacy to start or implement tax on unhealthy food, or restricting marketing of food and beverages to children, for example. And another issue that you've raised was about multi-sectoral engagement. I do agree with you. At the ground level, it is quite challenging issues, particularly, surprisingly actually, among the government sectors. And not so much in the food industries, because they would see the benefit of working with the health sectors, with the win-win situations, promotions of the healthy food. So they respond to our initiatives, for example, in providing a more nutritious, a more environment which is enabling to choose healthy food by reducing the sugar or whatever it is. With the government sectors, it's a lot more challenging, and the way we did, we're still trial and error. From my experience, our experience in Brunei is we try and really leverage on their current existing policies or their priorities, for example. For example, in education, we try and link that with academic performance, for example, nutrition and academic performance. Or in the agriculture, we link that to the visions and missions of sustainable food supply, for example. But even that, it comes with a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I thought you might mention one more term, which were also intersectoral collaboration among government sectors, but also among UN agencies, for example, is very important, is on the whole food safety. The food safety side. We just did a joint food safety assessment for Indonesia with WHO, but as you say, within the government, there's the food safety institution responsible for food safety, but we need to bring in the Ministry of Health, Education, Agriculture, Fisheries. All of them had to come together to look at food safety. More than 10 minutes, but yeah, a lot of ministries. In fact, when it comes to agricultural products, for example, the Ministry of Agriculture will have lead responsibility. When it comes to fisheries, it's the Ministry of Fishery. So there's no single institution with a lead mandate, and it's creating a lot of, not just confusion, but also insufficient positive action towards reducing food safety risks in Indonesia. But that's where we're coming together also as agencies to address those issues. Another example. Any other questions? We have another 7 minutes according to our timekeeper. Now or never. Any more food system questions? Okay. Maybe introduce yourself, then everybody knows also who you are.
Sorry, so the curious one from the back. My name is Nika. I'm from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Australian Embassy Jakarta. So we are we have bilateral programs in development cooperation, and I'm from the Health Unit, which our portfolio is regional health security and nutrition. So this is why I'm here, and I also want to learn. So thank you, Mark. I was just wondering about AMR, which is quite a big issue right now, and you did mention about the risk of 2050 people dying of AMR. Is that more from a nutrition side that, okay, because of buildup of antibiotics and everything and we'll just die, or is that more of a disease control issue, which is people are more resistant to medication, so it's more difficult to control diseases? So which one? Thank you.
Yeah, my understanding, I think you can find a statistic online, that more than 10 million people a year will die as a result of disease resistance, the resistance of bacteria to antibiotics. So it will become, they say, the biggest killer, above anything else, car accidents, other diseases. So unless we deal with the antimicrobial resistance, particularly for humans, of course, the resistance that builds up will prevent us from treating certain diseases. I'm sorry, the professor, also you mentioned different sectors, and both of you, I think, also talked about the private sector, which is something I must say is of course a sector that we should not neglect. I know there's some of you here from the food industry. Who's representing the food industry? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no question that the food industry has a hugely important role to play, and both, especially also in a positive sense, in terms of promoting good practice and being aware of the issues. In the end, the food industry, that's where the money is, and that's where the power is. The government, of course, have a lot of power when it comes to regulating, but for example, the discussion we had with the Food Safety Agency here, they said, look, all the rules are there, all the standards are there, but we have such difficulty enforcing them, lack of capacity, lack of funding, and so on. But this is where the role of the private sector is clearly very, very important as well. A comment on that one?
If I can just add, I think like Indonesia is a signatory to the Scaling Up Nutrition, or the SUN. And if you look at the Scaling Up Nutrition, you really have different groups of components, and one of that is the private sector. I come from the Philippines, and as some people would probably have heard, we have very strict rules, particularly with industries that would have infant formula. And so up to now, we have some problems with getting organizations that would not have the companies with infant formula. And I was talking with some people here in Indonesia because I would like to learn how the SUN have come together with regards to those different sectors that would have to work with the government.
Okay, yeah.
My voice is already
I think we
already
that.
loud.
I hope it was clear also for the camera. No, thank you for mentioning the SUN movement. I probably should have mentioned it already. FAO is also a member of the Scaling Up Nutrition movement, which indeed, as not sure how many of you are not familiar with the Sun movement, but if you aren't, please do become familiar, because it's where all the different sectors come together. Anyone who's got an interest in nutrition matters, and recognizes the importance of working across sectors and across categories, let's say, of government and private sector and UN agencies. Where it's a very good initiative it helps focus also the cross-sectoral collaboration on different issues related to nutrition.
If I can ask a question also. Some years ago.
I thought you had moved over there. I suddenly heard you speaking from there.
Okay, no. Some years ago, I'm not sure if it was in the 70s or early 80s, FAO has undertaken INCARD, incorporating nutrition considerations in agriculture and rural development. And I know that you had reports on that. And what we are undertaking now is very similar in the INCARD. Would you know what happened to the INCARD?
The INCARD.
Incorporating nutrition considerations in agriculture and rural development. Most, I think, of the FAO materials were done by Leonard Joy and Philip Payne.
Right. I think a lot of it was lost. FAO were a little lost on the way, I think in the 90s especially, and early 2000s. In spite of the International Conference on Nutrition in ICN in '92, the FAO nutrition emphasis on nutrition actually declined. Simply some of the people you mentioned, they left, they retired, and they were not replaced. And nutrition policy, for example, was a very strong aspect of FAO's work. Nutrition education, a lot of it now, luckily, has come back. In fact, our current Director General has gone as far as merging our agro-industry division with the nutrition division. So we're now taking very much a food systems approach, and all of this material you have here is a result of, let's say, the renewed emphasis of FAO, the renewed emphasis on nutrition. But rather than going back, let's say, the old way, we're now looking at nutrition in a forward-looking, multi-sectoral way in the context of the SDGs, etc. But yes, it did go missing for a while. Good observation.
Can I just revert to again the issue of overuse of antibiotics? It's interesting that this topic of microbiome is now such a hot issue. We all carry millions and trillions of microorganisms in our intestinal system. So are we, microorganisms and just providing a house for them? We're not human beings as such. They are the ones who are, playing the main role. So the thing about overuse of antibiotics is the fear of wiping out these natural microorganisms that we house. And perhaps some of the so-called modern diseases are due to increasing death of the good microorganisms in us and the survival of the not so good in us, and as well as other, of course, factors that we are not being careful with. Yeah. So I just want to say that to share. Thank you.
Good. I think my time is up. Says yes. She's the boss. So I think I'll be with you a little bit longer today. I'm supposed to also be talking to you this evening after or before dinner? After dinner. You know better than I do. So I'll stick around if you have more questions. Thank you all.
So thank you very much, Mr. Smulders, for the release that you have made this afternoon. So, to award the token of recognition, can we maybe call on Dr. Barba and Professor Gore?